If you're dealing with an issue of losing chickens, I would highly encourage you to try it out. It's not expensive. That's a potential deal breaker. I don't know if that's a dice we want to roll. One of my favorite little hacks on homestead is using mulch to cover up spots that are prone to muddiness, especially during spring when we have a lot of rain and subsequent mud. Now that we have all this mulch, why not put it to use? This spot in front of the barn is one of the most mud-prone spots. It's highly traveled. We move back and forth in here a lot. In the spring, it's just a mud pit. It's just slop. So by laying down a fairly thick layer of mulch, I've discovered, depending on the thickness, we'll usually get away with a year, sometimes more than a year, of this entire spot being covered up by mulch being mud-free. There's a few more spots, highly trafficked spots on the homestead where I'll probably throw down a bucket full of mulch. But this was the first one I thought of when we got that giant load of mulch in. So we'll see how this holds up, but it should be mud-free for us for the next year, maybe more. All right, folks, so I'd like to just jump right into it today and talk about an experiment that I've been running here on the Osted that involves loss of chickens to predators. I think I talked about it in last week's video. We had lost several chickens to what I later learned was a hawk over the past few weeks. And we've dealt with predators over the years, raccoons, skunks, possums, but I think the biggest predator that we've had to deal with, and that's probably taken out the most amount of chickens, has been the Cooper's hawk, the local hawk. That there's lots of them around here. And I even have a video from a few years ago when we were marching our meat chickens around in the meat chicken tractor, where as I was moving them, a hawk tried to swoop in and attack them while I was moving them. Like, it was very brave. So that's the type of predator that we've been dealing with, and it's been our biggest problem. So in last week's video, I decided I'd try out a new tactic, namely two things. Number one is inflatable tube guy, this thing right here. And initially I was only running this at night, and then I would turn it off during the day, and I only had it up here. But there's been a few things that I've changed. One is that I've actually been moving it around, and if I don't have it on top of this coop, I'll often have it out here outside of the chicken run, or a little bit in front of this lean-to that you see right here. That's the first change I made. The second was just a simple clock radio, AM FM radio.
Get zero down, zero payments for 90 days, and 0% financing.
I've turned up loud.
Twin City Nissan. TwinCityNissan.
I'll turn it off now, just so you can hear me talk. And that was something I only had turned on in the mornings. I had set the alarm to have it turn on in the mornings. And this was my two-pronged approach. Inflatable tube guy and clock radio that I could set an alarm for and have the alarm go off, and then just have talk radio, not music, talk radio, so it sounds like somebody's in here talking. And so I think I'd mentioned in last week's video that I'd tried it and it seemed to be working because I hadn't lost any chickens with it. Well, there was one night last week and I'd forgotten to turn on the radio. I think I had unplugged it to do another project out here in the barn, and I'd forgotten to plug it back in. And wouldn't you know it, on that one night where I didn't have either of those deterrents available, I woke up and there was a dead chicken. It looked like it was killed also by that same hawk. So obviously I was like, oh man, I can't believe I forgot to do that. But the other part of me, as bummed as I was for losing a chicken, it's never good to lose one of your livestock to predators, one of your chickens to predators. As bummed as I was about losing that chicken, I realized, man, I may have stumbled on a winning strategy when it comes to deterring predators. This thing, the tube guy, really does seem like he's moving. It's unpredictable, so any sort of predator that's hanging out over there watching can't really predict what this thing is going to do. It flops up randomly, and it's got these big googly eyes on the front of it. And when the radio is turned on, which again I turned it off so I can talk to you, when the radio is turned on, it really does sound like somebody's in here talking. So between those two things, hawks, raccoons, whatever other predators are out there, truly do think that there's somebody walking around and that they shouldn't mess with it. So it's been several days now where I've continued with this approach. No losses at all whatsoever. The one time I forgot to do it, a loss. Take that how you will. This is anecdotal, but if you're dealing with an issue of losing chickens, I would highly encourage you to try it out. It's not expensive. This inflatable tube guy I got off of Amazon for 20-something bucks. I'll include the link in the description below. I'm not affiliated with them. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but it's just something I found for fairly reasonable price on Amazon. And in terms of the alarm clock radio, I got this one at the local Walmart or whatever for like $10. You could probably find something very similar. Just make sure that it has a radio on it so you can tune it to your local talk radio station. Between those two methods and just using them concurrent, I keep them running all the time. I've been keeping the radio running day and night, and I've been keeping Inflatable Tube Man going day and night. And the way that I'm thinking about it is, if one of them breaks down, well, they're really cheap to replace if I need to. So I'm very pleased with this. I think that this is working. And again, it's anecdotal, but I'd imagine it would continue to work. So if you're dealing with a loss issue with your chickens or your turkeys or whatever, give this a shot. I think if your experience is anything like mine, you won't lose any more chickens. It's obviously not 100% guarantee. Who knows how bobcats would respond to this or other critters out there. But for what we're dealing with, it's worked. And it's happened long enough now for me to stand by that. I think it'll work for you. Something else I wanted to chat about real quick. A couple of people have asked about my plans for the garden now that we're in March. It's still cold, obviously, but it won't be for much longer. And so a lot of people said, hey, what's your plan with your silage tarp over your garden? I think we're going to pull it here in the next week or maybe 2 weeks. What are we going to do after we pull it up? Obviously, there's a lot of dead weeds and grass. And I think what I'm going to do is something a little bit unorthodox this year. So a couple of years back, we laid down plastic tarp. Maybe it's not plastic. This stuff right here for our lanes as a weed barrier. And obviously it didn't work. So here's my plan. And if you guys have any better ideas, I'd be super interested in hearing them. But my plan is to obviously take the silage tarp off, pull up all of this stuff that doesn't work, and then go through with my flamethrower and burn off any of the weeds that are left over. When I pull this stuff up, you'll see underneath it, there's a lot of old Bermuda grass roots. I intend to burn those too. Watch what happens when I pull this up. So obviously there's all these weeds on top. Look what happens when I pick it up. This right here. And now this is a lane. And so you can see there's still some big stringy Bermuda roots here, but they're exposed and in my view, they're vulnerable. So after I take the silage tarp off, I'm gonna pull up anywhere that we have this tarp, this additional tarp that's meant to block out the weeds. Hey worm, look at you. I'm gonna pull it up and go through with the flamethrower and just burn off any of the weeds. Now in what's left of the beds, I'm not gonna pull up the silage tarp, but in the places where we did have beds, I don't know if I'm gonna put the wooden frames around them this year. We're looking into kind of a back to Eden approach this time, especially with all the mulch that we've got. It's not a final decision, but I think what we might do is just have staggered lanes with continuous beds that run between them, and maybe putting up trellis or T-posts along those to kind of keep them supported, kind of like what we've done over there with the tomato beds. We've always had a pretty fruitful garden, but we've always dealt with weeds. And so I think we're going to try this new approach this year. Hopefully it will work for us. But the next step, again, within a week or two, is to pull up all this stuff and start burning the weeds. Okay, so we have a date for the insulation team that's going to go up to our upstairs, our attic room. So I've got my work cut out for me. Let's get up there and see what's going on. Okay, so real quick primer for those of you that aren't up to speed. This is our kind of bonus room up in the attic that we have been using as an office. However, it's pretty much unusable during the summer months. It gets to, I think we recorded it once somewhere around over 110 degrees up here. Unusable. You can't be up here. So we took down the walls. The insulation that was currently here was really thin. And after a lot of discussion, we decided that we would get closed cell spray foam up on the roof. Now, there's pros and cons with that. The pros are this would absolutely seal this place up. It would be conditioned. In other words, it would be climate controlled like the rest of the house. It would be a conditioned livable space up here. Insulation folks out, they told us that. Jim, our good friend Jim from Turtles Homestead, he came out and he agreed as well it would do that. The cons, however, give me pause, and those include things like if there's ever a leak in this metal roof that we have. Currently there's no leak, but if there ever was a leak, we wouldn't know about it probably until it was too late. It's really hard to detect leaks when there's closed cell foam because those leaks stay underneath the foam. The foam blocks them from coming out. That's a potential deal breaker. Not having any idea about a structurally invasive leak, something that could ruin the integrity of our structure through rot, and not having any idea about it because of the foam is something that I don't know if that's a dice we want to roll. However, you know, with a sheet metal roof, there's a lot of people that are saying the chances of it getting a leak if the screws are installed properly are very, very slim. You know, we're weighing the pros and cons, and we have a date set for the spray foam insulation. It's next month. I think it's like April 4th or 5th. So we got about a month, a little under a month. If we can get all the work that we need to get done, we could get it done. In the meantime, between now and then, I'm really thinking hard about whether or not I want to actually go forward with the closed cell spray foam. It seems to be the best option for actually sealing this place up and conditioning it, but we have to deal with that unknown. There are other options as well. Rock wool, the mineral batting. There's the foam boards. I haven't really looked into those, but somebody mentioned those to me as a potential option here. But the clock is ticking. So while I think about that, whether or not I want to go through with it, I also have to do some work. And the primary thing I need to get done is panel off this open space right here. You can see to the other side of the room there's this just kind of big open cavernous space. The chimney's right there, and the rest of the attic space is back in there. Regardless of whether I want to spray foam or not, I have to put up panels here to block off all of this extra space from this room that we want conditioned one day, whether it's through spray foam or something else. It's not going to be easy to just plop panels in there. And the panels don't have to be thick. It doesn't have to be thick plywood. It could be something fairly thin. Dad has a bunch of leftover siding from his shed project that he's not using. So I'll probably use that siding here, but I need to set it on something. So what I'll probably end up doing is just set in some strips along the very back, 1x1 strips here. Just anchor those in and just have that be something I can just plop those boards on. Right up along here, right in here. And so that will be my task today, is to get those 1x1 strips up as much as I can. Over the next few days, that's going to be my primary task, is getting those up so I can panel that off. So you might be able to see it, but basically I just set in a recessed strip on either side that I can just set a panel, I can nest a panel into and tack it to it. Now this one is small enough and close enough to that opening where I may just be able to come around from back and pop up a panel real quick from the other side. Let's peek and see. Yes, it did. So you see this? This needs to happen all through there. Whether or not we end up spray foaming, this is still something that we should do, so we can put actual insulation in here and not have the air stretch out into these big open spaces. So I was able to do it there, but now that these strips are up, I just need to measure the panels, stick them in. This one, I'll need to get creative for. But the beat march is on. Hopefully by this time next week, all of these panels will be up. Okay, lots to think about and lots to work on in the coming week. Hopefully the paneling will be done and I'll have done a little bit more research on the great quandary, to spray foam or not to spray foam. And if I don't spray foam, is there anything else that would give me any sort of comfortable temperature up there in the attic? I don't know. It's a lot to think about, and time is of the essence. So until we see you again next time, thanks for hanging out with us. And remember, as always, slowly.